You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
This is Steve Sansweet of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to the 602 Club.
There was a little bar in Mill Valley where all the Starfleet trainees used to go.
The 602 Club.
You know it.
I was there more times than I can remember.
This is Krypton, and this is the story of the House of El.
My name is Adam Strange. Someone from the future is coming to destroy Krypton.
Because your grandson becomes the greatest hero in the universe.
Superman.
I've been having this vision.
We are not alone in the universe.
Either rise or you fall.
It's known as the Collector of Worlds, but his true name is Brainiac.
Son of Krypton, your world is at an end.
I gotta do what I gotta.
Help me find a way to stop him.
You have to find the fortress.
I gotta do what I
It's time you learned the truth.
Brainiac is going to rip Kandor from the ground and enslave all of us.
light 'em up.
You are a Zod.
Fight with honor and fight without mercy. I gotta do what I gotta do.
Once this cape is gone, our time's up.
He never came.
Superman will have been wiped from existence.
Light 'em up, light 'em up.
Hello and welcome to the 602 Club. I am your host here, Matthew Rushing, and I'm so excited to be coming to you from the Cantina on Krypton, or Krypton's Cantina, or something like that. Very excited. And strangely enough, from the past, too. So I'm so glad this podcast is making it to you. But very glad that we are going to be here to talk about a brand new show as it's premiered now on SYFY. Is it really sci-fi? It looks more like SYFY. But we're going to be excited to talk about that, and I'm really glad to welcome to the show for the very first time somebody that you've probably heard on the network, as she has been all over the place these days with The Edge and Warp 5 and other places. But Brandi Jackola, how's it going?
I am peachy keen, and I'm super excited to be here. And
you're super excited?
I'm super excited. No pun intended, but I do them accidentally all the time. And I thought that my husband and I were the only people who call it SYFY, because that's what we call it, SYFY.
It's what it looks like, right?
Yep. We didn't like it when they changed that, but they had to do something they could brand and trademark, so...
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. That does definitely make sense. So, but, you know, they've been going all over the place. I know some friends who love, like, the Expanse show that they've been doing, you know? And
I'm
so
one
they've
of those.
They've had some really good things happen. Obviously, everybody knows Battlestar Galactica.
Loved it.
And, yeah, that reboot. So, you know, this whole idea of starting this... kind of prequel to everything we know about Krypton and Superman, and so I'm excited to dive into that. Before we get into that, though, just of course, you can find us all over the place. Trek FM's everywhere. We're over on Apple Podcasts, at iTunes.com/TrekFM. You can find all of the shows there. But while you're there, hit the subscribe button for the 602 Club. Make sure you're subscribed so you get the show as soon as I publish it. And then, of course, make sure that you leave us a star rating review. Let us know what you think of the show and help other people find the show. You can find us, like us, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. You can also find us, like us, follow us, share all the stuff we share over on Twitter at TrekFM. We've got the listeners only discussion group, and that is housed on Facebook. So if you go to Facebook and type Babel into the search field, you'll find the Babel Conference, which is our discussion group for listeners. And if you go to the website at trek.fm, you can also find on any of the menu bars, you'll see the discussion on any of the show pages. You can click that. That'll bring you to the group. And then last but not least, while you're at the website, trek.fm, you can go to the contact section, choose a show, choose the 602 Club, and that would send an email to me and any host that's on that week. So, yeah, I love getting emails about the show. It's so much fun. So I wanted to ask you first, before we even kind of, I guess we're starting at the beginning of the end, since we all know kind of what's going to happen to Krypton, right? It's going to get destroyed.
Yep.
at least we think it's going to get destroyed.
It's going to go. It's going to go.
Yeah. I wanted to know kind of just what your excitement level for the show was going in, and was this something you were looking forward to? Are you a Superman fan? Where were you when you saw? Oh, they're gonna. That's interesting.
Okay,
prequel.
Well, and I have a confession to make because I am a big fan of the DC television shows, especially those on the CW.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed those very much. Not as much of a fan of the DC cinematic universe. I want to be. I really want to be. And someday they're going to do something that I'm going to go, yep, that's it. That's what I was hoping for.
So not even Wonder Woman for
No,
you.
Wonder Woman. Yeah, Wonder Woman did it. It still had some issues, but in my mind, those issues were minuscule enough that I can watch the movie over and over again. And so that is one I did purchase. And, as a kid, everybody loves Superman when you're a kid, especially. There were plenty of times we ran around with capes on, jumping off of things, much to my parents' chagrin. And as I got older, my attention went elsewhere, especially with Wonder Woman and the 70s series, because I am old enough to have watched that as it happened. And, so my attention shifted, and as I got even older, my favorite DC Universe character is now the one that everybody's like, what, really? Which is John Constantine. So
oh, nice, and he's doing so great on the Legends of Tomorrow these days, which is fantastic. Yeah, Matt Ryan is John Constantine. Let's just
the perfect. You couldn't do it any better. I mean, it's just fantastic, and so I've been collecting all of the original graphic novels. I'm up to 11. I'm buying one a month.
Oh, nice.
So
well, and he's I know he's going to be back. They're going to make. I think he's going to be in the new Justice League Dark that's coming out this summer.
Yes, because he was in another Justice League Dark movie. And there is an animated series that is only going to be on CW Seed, and that's fine. I got that app on my Kindle Fire Stick. I'm ready to go. So the minute it's
they
live.
have some good stuff on there too, because they had Vixen on there as well.
Exactly.
So.
Yes, they have a lot of good animated things. Plus, they have all of the episodes of the original Constantine television series that was way too short-lived. Shouldn't have done it on NBC.
I don't know why they put that on NBC. I feel like if you had just put that on CW, it would have worked. You could have paired it with
Supernatural.
Supernatural, yeah.
Exactly what I thought, yes. Anyway, long story short, when I saw the first commercial for Krypton, I said, oh, for heaven's sake, another prequel. And then I thought, okay, that is not fair. And I thought, I should give this a chance because SYFY has been doing some really good stuff. And I'm curious to see how this plays out. And then being on the 602 Club was the perfect excuse to watch it a couple of times at least and talk about it. And I'd have to say, my 80-year-old mother called me over the weekend and said, do you know about this show Krypton? And I said, yes, yes,
heard
Mom.
about the Krypton?
Yeah, I said, Mom, I do know about it. I'm actually going to be talking about it on the 602 Club. She said, oh, I didn't know that's what you were doing on that show. And I said, well, we talk about different things. And she said, well, I watched it and I really liked it. What did you think? And just like, I love my mom so much. It's because of my mom I got into sci-fi and fantasy in the first place. My mom and dad did that. So, and she's just like, oh, I'm going to watch the next episode. I really enjoyed this. So I just thought that was so adorable. It speaks to multiple age groups. So there you go.
That is really cool. That might be one of the most unique stories that we've ever had on the show, that your mother is calling you up. I also, interestingly enough, I guess we have the official pronunciation of Krypton. It is Krypton, not Krypton, as as Marlon Brando was so famously said many, many times as he talked about Krypton.
Yeah, I always thought that was weird.
Yes. I don't know. Krypton. Maybe. Anyway, everybody has a British accent in the show too, so that's
which is fine.
Which makes kind of sense, right? Because you had Terrence Stamp, with the British accent, in the movie,
and Sarah Douglas with the British accent.
Yeah. Well, and this show is before I even get into my excitement for it, but just kind of overall, this show is an amalgamation of just about as many different things that have been done or seen from Krypton, all kind of thrown together, all the way from, what we saw in Man of Steel, all the way back, way back, and, pulling from old archives in DC from what we know. So, and it really is. It's kind of nice because it's not just one vision. It's kind of like all of these visions kind of sewn together, which is good because I feel like as me as a comic book fan, it doesn't turn me off because it's like, you just get to enjoy pulling, they got that from Birthright or, all that kind of stuff. So, I'm a huge Superman fan. And as everybody knows who listens to the show, for the most part, I've really enjoyed the DC films. And when I heard that David Goyer had this idea to do this show because of what they had done in Man of Steel, I know from so many people, regardless of whether they like that movie, most of the people enjoyed the stuff on Krypton and thought that was really strong. And so the idea that they would kind of bring some of those sensibilities to a show was really neat. And so I was excited to see what they would do, hopeful, because a show can go any way. But I was looking forward to kind of getting to this point, and I thought that the premise of the show was really interesting. Again, we're kind of going back to the beginning of the end and telling the story about Superman's grandfather. And I think that's kind of fascinating, and how the House of El has been ostracized. They've been shamed because of what his grandfather did, which was saying to the Kryptonian people, hey, we're not alone in the universe. And I thought that was kind of fascinating that this whole idea of that there's been a shift in Kryptonian civilization from kind of a more open society to being a more closed society, and it's his grandfather who's kind of this beacon of truth. And it's not even like in defiance of, it feels like maybe Kryptonian belief from years ago. It's more of in defiance of this oligarchy now, and I thought that was kind of cool.
I actually really enjoyed that, and I felt that this silent figure who is the voice of Rao was extremely compelling without saying a word or having a facial expression.
Yeah, just being super creepy.
Yeah, super creepy.
It was like a 12-sided clown.
Yeah, it was
12-sided Kryptonian clown. It was like super creep.
It kind of looked like something I fought in Final Fantasy VII once, but not quite. I think it was in the tower where Yuffie had to fight all the way to the top. Anyway, that doesn't matter. But it seems like this whole oligarchy thing started with the voice of Rao, and I am intrigued. I want to know how this person came to power. Are they Kryptonian? We don't know. They've got this mask on. They've got gloves on. They're in this robe that shows no shape whatsoever. Is it male? Is it female? All of these things that I don't know. And I am intrigued by it because the first thing I said when the episode started, I turned to my husband and I said, okay, I'm here. Now make me care. In 5 minutes, I cared. It hardly took any time at all before I was thinking, I want to know more. I want to know how this all goes. And of course, this is a finite timeline. We know how it's all going to end. But it's far enough back that there's so much they can still do, that you can actually build a series about this instead of maybe just a couple of TV movies or what have you.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of what I thought, just for me personally, the genius of doing Enterprise as opposed to, say, Discovery. Enterprise being so far back, it gives you an opportunity to really do some things without feeling like you're crouching on the, what you already know.
Yes.
Whereas for me, Discovery is too close, and it creates too many issues in my brain, and just it hasn't worked for me. But I think you're right here too. This allows you to have enough time to play with. And the whole idea of like Adam Strange in the show coming here because, hey, Brainiac is coming to destroy your planet because he doesn't want Superman to ever be born. So you could, the whole point of this is a time travel story. So we could change everything if we don't, turn Krypton around. We got to turn Krypton around and make sure that they are able to fight off an invasion by Brainiac because they're ready for it, which is somewhat interesting too, because this also takes place in the city of Kandor, and Kandor is famous for being the bottled city of Kandor that Brainiac has on his ship.
Yeah,
so
he shrank it down, put it in his collection.
How all this is going to play together is fascinating to me, and to me, the ambiguity of the setup in the sense that, like, there are a lot of things that can happen in the show that I don't know what's going to happen specifically. Like, I mean, yeah, we found this fortress, right, for his grandfather, but how does he get anybody on his side? How does, it's so big. And, like, there's also the finite timeline of the cape disappearing, and as the cape disappears, it's like this reverse hourglass that's letting you know time is running out. And when that's gone, well, we're all screwed, because Superman will be dead and Krypton will be gone before it's supposed to be actually gone.
Yeah, it's of all the things that I expected them to do, I really wasn't thinking about Brainiac at all. And so I kept calling him Galactus, because the cloud thing that they were showing kind of looked like Galactus a bit. But that's okay. I love Marvel and I love DC, and they borrowed from each other all the time throughout the years, and I'm fine with that. I don't get upset. So when they revealed it as Brainiac, I went, yeah, duh, of course. Who else are you going to have as your overarching big bad? But unfortunately, Seg is weighed down with all of these minute concerns going on as well, because of, suddenly I'm ranked now and I get to marry this lady that I don't even know. And, my parents are dead. He's got so many other things to deal with, and yet he's got to find a way to save the world at the same time. And that is a lot to put on a young man. It's a lot to put on anybody.
Yeah, I loved, obviously, if anybody has read Jeff Johns' Brainiac run with Superman, this is that Brainiac. Even the Brainiac who is kind of immersed in all the cables and everything, and the way the ship looks and all that is very similar to that comic book run that he did with Gary Frank.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really cool. And he looks terrifying.
Yes.
Like, just the tiny bit that we saw of him is absolutely terrifying. So I feel like, to me, I'm with your mother. So I don't know if that makes me 80 or not, but like I felt like this show's premise and the way that it plays out in the first episode left me wondering all of these things and wanting to know more.
Yes.
But not on top of that, like you kind of mentioned a little bit, and this, like, I kind of label this like Kryptonian curse, that this oligarchy has taken over from the voice of Rao, and there is no more freedom on Krypton. There is no more free will. Everything is completely predestined from the second that you're conceived. And when I say conceived, I don't mean you got jiggy with it with
no.
girl.
No, we don't do that anymore.
No. We just put our finger on a button, and it takes a little blood sample and then creates a child of you two together, and then tells you what its entire life's going to be like. Like, I really, this whole idea of, like, taking the Genesis Chamber idea, we had seen there in Man of Steel, and telling exactly what a person's going to be, how long they're going to live, what they're going to work. Like, that was a really interesting thing to see play out in this show. Like, I was it's one of the things I'm so fascinated to see kind of continue throughout the show, this idea of, free will versus complete and utter determinism.
When they came to that scene and I was watching that, I just thought, that sounds like a horrible way to live. Because where's the creativity? Where's the impulse? Where's the freedom of expression? There is none. And that was one of Kal-El's sins, was doing something he shouldn't do, doing something that he wasn't commissioned to do, doing something that wasn't part of his life plan. And if it weren't for him, they wouldn't even know Brainiac was coming. Gosh. Well, Adam Strange helped out on that front, too. But, you know, his grandfather knew. And all of this, of course, led him to that Fortress of Solitude via his mother. And it's, you know, I was actually really happy to see a Fortress of Solitude on Krypton. I thought, yeah, that fits. That would start with Kal-El, and maybe even before, I don't know. But he had to have this place because the oligarchy is always watching. And he had to have some place where no one could see what he was doing, because he knew what he was doing would not be viewed with a kind eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of that Police song. And it really, just the idea, and even too, behind the Police song, you know, because it's about the Soviet Union, and you know, there's always somebody watching, and this idea that this oligarchy run by the voice of Ra. And what I thought was so interesting too is that the way that they have this set up, I felt like was nicely done, in the sense that you can tell that it's it is a perversion of, already you can tell that it's a perversion of the idea of Ra as being the Kryptonian god.
Oh, yeah.
And that this is being used completely for power, and in a game of totally controlling a civilization, or trying to. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because the whole idea of there being no free will, and you do this, or we either execute you by sending you to the wastelands, or we make you rankless and you're nobody in our society. And I thought that was just kind of this interesting idea, and it feels very it reminds me a little bit some of the things that they did in Altered Carbon, where there's the people who live below, above, and below, and the way that those in power try to stay in power in these guilds and everything. And I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, that whole idea that, like, you're either a lawmaker, or you're a military person, or you're in science, and so forth, is just such an interesting idea, because that ultimate segregation definitely leads to stagnation in a society. And you can already see that Krypton's facing that problem, right? Their planet is uninhabitable on the surface, at least near Kandor.
Yep.
So they're already in a bubble. You know, I mean, it's already a bottle city, because you don't want to stay outside for too long. And then, two, how can you solve any problems if you don't have, like, you know, the military and science and, you know, medicine and all these things working together? If everything's so segregated, like, you run into all these type of problems, and it's no wonder their society it's just kind of stuck.
Yeah, it is very stuck. And I'm going to say something that people are probably going to find very radical, because I'm certain that I don't know even remotely as much Superman history as, say, you do, Matt. But it occurred to me, what if whoever is in this guise of the voice of Ra is working with Brainiac and breeding all of this stagnation so that there will be no one to resist when Brainiac arrives? That's probably totally off the mark, but I had the thought while I was watching it.
I mean, I don't think so. I think you could be onto something, and it would make sense that, you know, it would make sense to me that Brainiac might have a plant on Krypton so that he can make his will come forth, and that the voice of, or the supposed voice of Ra is actually the voice of Brainiac, making sure that this planet gets led to destruction early. I like that. I think that's actually really a good pull, because it kind of fits with, you know, I think a lot of the comic lore that kind of goes along with Brainiac and Krypton, and there's a lot of things that happen throughout the 80s. It gets really muddied, so it's too much to talk about in this episode.
So it's like comic book history. Yeah, I know. It all gets muddied.
Absolutely.
It all gets muddied.
So I like that a lot, though, that idea.
It's the only explanation I can think of for the stagnant society coming about because of the voice of Ra. At least that's what I'm assuming. It's because of the voice of Ra. And the voice of Ra being completely covered, having no part of their body exposed, and never speaking, at least that we see or hear. So I just thought there has to be a reason for that. And this person is obviously not what they seem. So I am looking forward to finding out more. I'm looking forward to so much. It's just, I want more.
Yeah. Well, and I thought it was interesting, too, the idea, because I do think that this is something pretty new. It may be something I don't recall seeing this in any Superman material. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, Twitter, because that's what you're for.
Yeah, that's what Twitter does. You're wrong!
Yeah. Wrong! But
well, actually...
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I don't think we've ever seen the idea of a rankless part of the society before. I think that's new, and so I found that pretty interesting to see. And I love the way that kind of played into, the fact that Kal-El has been made this, and it's one of the ways to which this oligarchy keeps people in line, right? You do what we say, or we will give you the rank of nothing, and you will be basically banished to, the bottom of Kandor, and nobody will care about you, and you will die, and your, lineage will not go on. And so that's such a huge part of Kryptonian society, is the idea of families and crests and all of that. I think is fascinating. But I also kind of think in this whole idea of that, it also gives you the idea of we're going to build into the whole Superman mythos how in the world that symbol became known as a symbol of hope. Like, we've always heard that before.
Yes.
But now I think we're going to actually find out what that story is. And then, to me, that's really exciting, because right now the symbol of El is nothing.
Yep.
It's rankless. So I think, to me, that's a really cool thing to see.
I agree. I love it when a prequel takes on the direction of explaining something that has never really been covered before, because that's how you do a prequel. Don't tell us stories that we already know. But I love that they're also pulling in all of these things, because I know that there were people who went to the DC archives and just went through all the Superman stuff and just pulled from this and that. And because I watched the making of special, and I watched our young friend, whose name escapes me for the moment, so I'm going to look at the page and find out, who plays Seg. He's so adorable.
Oh, Cameron.
Yeah. And he actually goes to the DC archives, and man, they show him so much stuff that I have never seen. I actually have a reprint of the very first Superman comic that is very dear to my heart. I haven't even opened it from its plastic case. It's completely sealed. So it's just like, no, I'm just going to keep you in the bag forever and ever, because that's really special to me. And I want to see what other things they're going to pull in and still make this fit into some kind of continuity of what we know of the future, which is basically our present. So that's a tricky tightrope to walk, and so far they're doing a great job.
Well, I think the great thing about the way that they're setting all of this up, is they're creating, and they're trying to create a world which is interesting to watch, Superman to have come from.
Yes.
But I also think, what's fascinating to me is that I enjoy the fact that we're going to learn about Superman's lineage, so that when we think of Superman and who he is on our planet and who he becomes because of who he was raised by on Earth, we also know that there were those same kind of people on Krypton that were his parents and his grandparents that were actually these same type of people as well. And I think that's really neat to get to fill in that whole other side. I mean, we know some about Jor-El and Laura, and stuff like that. But I think to kind of really flesh this all out, it's going to be kind of fascinating. And Obviously, too, we could always run into the other side of the family, which later on, depending on how long the show lasts, you can always have, because you've got Kara Zor-El, who is Supergirl, and so you could run into that side of the family and everything. So you can really start to build a lot of different things that can happen because they're also from Kandor. So I think that would be really fascinating. And one of the things, too, that was kind of neat that they pulled in that I enjoyed was the whole idea of these Black Zero terrorists.
Oh, yes.
And those have been a couple things. Have been a couple different organizations. It's actually been a person. So there's a lot of things they can pull on. But what I think they're pulling on here is that it's an elite Kryptonian military force under the commander of Ursa. And this unit was killed attempting to defend Kandor from Brainiac. So I'm thinking that Black Zero in the show will be a group that's believed Val-El's warnings and has kind of been what labeled a terrorist group. Mm-hmm. But really, in the end, they're kind of like the Kryptonian rebellion.
Yes. I hope you're right. I love that. I want that to be true.
Yeah, because because the way that they dealt with the idea of Black Zero, that seemed to be kind of where they were going. So
yeah, it seems like, because why else would his mother use that as the reason that she had stolen the skimmer and gone out into the wastes and what have you? It was the perfect cover. Didn't seem like many people believed her, but that's beside the point. She gives us just a small tease before she's murdered.
Ceremoniously executed.
Yeah. Mercifully, I have to say, because honestly, that whole outcasting you to the wastes is not cool. That's just cruel and unusual.
Yeah, it could have definitely been worse.
Yeah, it could have been worse. And that's a whole other story. But they gave us that little nugget. I want to see them build on it. I want it to be what you think it's going to be, because that is going to just add another layer. And maybe that's who Seg is going to find and who he's going to ally with. And then everybody's working on this project together. And Voice of Ra is closing in on them. And oh no, Brainiac's here. I don't know. I'm going way too far ahead. So
well, and I like the idea that in the end, maybe Seg becomes like the Luke Skywalker-ish type, with Black Zero of helping them to defeat, the first enemy, which is this, oligarchy here that's ruining their planet and keeping it unsafe, and then the Brainiac problem. So I'm wondering if, that's going to be part of all of these seasons and how this is going to play out. Because, the cape and it disappearing seems to add a pretty distinct timeline. Like, it can't seem like it can take forever. So at most, I almost feel like this is maybe a 2-season storyline,
Sure.
Like, you solve part of the problem the first season, and the second season kind of wraps that part up. And so, I don't know. But the whole idea of Black Zero was really fun, because immediately my ears perked up when I heard it, because that's the name of Zod's ship. And Man of Steel is Black Zero. So, and the idea of going back into the archives and, again, just pulling this out, I think is really cool, and using as much as possible of what we know of Krypton from the comics was great.
I agree. And the one thing that I felt about this show is that you can have only basic knowledge of Superman as the character and come into this and still enjoy it and still feel compelled by it. There's something for everyone. There's something for every level of fan in this premiere. And that is a hard thing to do. And there may be people who disagree, and that's fine. But I really feel like this was really clever, the way that they could attract many different age groups, many different fan levels. I'm sorry, you were going to say something, Matt.
No. All I wanted to say was I think you're absolutely right. And the main thing is because, instinctively you all understand Superman is an idea. right? Even if you've never really read the comic books, you understand his importance just because it's Superman, and it's the most recognizable shield in the world next to the cross. So it's like that's the impact of this character. So coming in, you don't have to have been somebody who's read 1,000 Superman comics. They'll give you what you need in the episode, and I think that's the thing that's really great.
It is, and they're not dumbing it down. That's the thing. They're giving us exposition, but they're not dumbing it down. They're not making it like this is Superman for beginners. That's not what this is. They're putting us in the middle of a story and saying, "Here you go, have fun," and they made me care, and I want more. I want more. And I talked to my mother again today, and she said, "Now, Krypton's on Wednesdays, right?" And I said, "Yeah, but here it airs like at 11 p.m." And she says, "Oh, you know me. I'm up till like 12 or 1. I'll watch it."
I got a quick shout out at the moment. You can get the pilot free on iTunes, so you can watch the whole thing without. I'm just saying, no reason not to watch it. It's free.
Absolutely, no reason not to.
What did you? So the cast that we have, Cameron Cuff plays Seg-El, and obviously playing Superman's grandfather and Jor-El's father.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about him, since he is our main character? And honestly, obviously he doesn't work. The show's kind of sunk.
Yeah, our introduction to adult Seg is very fun. Because he's basically getting beat up in a bar by some officers.
It's very Kirk. 2009.
Right?
This is the same type of story, right?
It is, but not at the same time, because he's got a deal going on with our bartender, his friend Kim, and they're taking bets on how long he'll last. We don't know that at first, but there's obviously something where he's got to draw out the fight a certain amount of time. And immediately we can tell, okay, you're sullen and you're angry and you hate what the powers that be did to your grandfather, and rightly so. You're unranked. He doesn't seem so bothered by the unranked part. He seems to have a pretty good time when he's in the bar, even when he's getting the crap beat out of him. So...
Yeah, that's really where I felt the Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that he's kind of somebody who's enjoyed reveling in, oh, well, you don't like me? Well, then I'll be twice the rebel, Like, and I think it's interesting to watch that, he kind of has that 2009 Kirk storyline where he has to be challenged to do something more. And instead of it being Pike, it's kind of Adam Strange who comes in and kind of gives him the kick he needs to take all of that, vigor, to be something better, and to fight for something more than just even his own family. Like, it's all of Krypton.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know. I felt like I feel like he's good. There were a couple places where he's a little bit uneven just as an actor, but I think he's going to grow into the role, and I really I enjoyed him. And there were a couple of moments where he said some lines, and it made my wife chuckle. And if you can actually make her chuckle out loud at a TV show, you're doing something right.
Excellent.
So yeah, I mean, and he did have a couple of funny little quips, and yeah, I really enjoyed the idea that he's going to be the one that kind of changes the El family name to make it something bigger, and to make it that thing that we kind of understand of, for that in that crest. I just think so. For me watching that, I'm excited. So he was good. We have Lyta-Zod, who is this cadet and warrior in the Kryptonian military, and yes, you heard right, a Zod. Her mother actually happens to be one of the trainers. Not such a nice person.
But she was glorious in action. Whew.
And she was also in Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I could watch her fight all day.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
But when you stab your own daughter in the hand, anyway. But her daughter. What did you end up thinking of Georgina Campbell as Seg-El's, love interest, at least at the beginning of this episode.
Well, I'm still undecided on her. I found her a little bit bland, and I didn't really, they have this secret romance, not that it's secret to Seg's parents at all. They are not oblivious to that at all.
It's very Romeo and Juliet.
It is very Romeo and Juliet. I don't know. I want more from her. I think she's capable of more. I want to see the character developed more, because right now she's just the girl who has to save face with her mother, and she's bound to this other guy, and the binding's going to take place in a couple of weeks and such. But I want more from her. I want more about her, because right now she's just kind of two-dimensional to me. And that's no fault of the actress, I don't think. I just feel like she isn't given enough to do. You see her asking her mother for mercy when her mother's about to dislocate her shoulder and then getting stabbed through the hand. And then you see her with Seg, and you see her pretend to arrest Seg later. But you don't really get an idea of who she is. So I want more character development there, and I'm hoping that I get it. And then I will make a judgment on whether or not I care.
Yeah, I think I think I really agree with your assessment. She doesn't really get anything to do that's a standout, and because it's the classic Romeo and Juliet, which I guess apparently is not as good unless you've read it in the original Kryptonian.
I read it in Klingon. I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah. It's much better in the original Kryptonian.
Good to know. I will pick up a copy.
Yeah, so she gets to be the love interest and the person who doesn't really kind of want to be where she is and everything, but there isn't anything that's super involved there. In fact, we'll talk about in a minute, but I feel like Nyssa-Vex is, in this short screen time she had, was much more fascinating than Lyta-Zod was. And I think it's just because of the part that's written for her. And I think it is fascinating. Something that, we were talking about the idea of no free will. They don't even get to choose who they get to be married to. They don't get to choose who they're bonded to. Nope. It just it gets chosen for them. And so if you're in one of these ranked families, now I guess with your rankless it doesn't matter, but for them they don't get to choose. And so I thought that was kind of fascinating, and it kind of created this world that reminds me of the things that you see in I don't know, any show that kind of takes place in ancient Rome or like a Game of Thrones type of thing or whatever, where people have these arranged marriages, and then of course there's lots of affairs on the side because they don't really love the person that they're with. Right. So I feel like that in Krypton you probably got that happening a lot, because these people have been put together, but they don't love each other, and they might not want to spend the time to try and get to love each other. So I thought that was something that could be something we see later on. But yeah, I don't know. She was okay, and the character was okay at the moment.
Yeah,
so.
It wasn't terrible. It just was lacking, I guess, is the best sum up of that. But yeah, do you want to talk about Nyssa? Because
yeah, I think Nyssa-Vex, Wallace Day, the fact that her she's the daughter of Darren Vex. He is the guy who sentenced Kal-El to death. And then, of course, we get Seg-El saving his life and the council's life, because he was going to get his father his medicine. His father was Darren Vex's, I guess, assistant?
Yeah.
Executive assistant?
Slave, yeah,
basically. And he ends up stopping a Black Zero terrorist from blowing up this Voice of Ra council. And so he's given a rank again, and Darren Vex chooses him to bond with his daughter, Nyssa-Vex. And the small time that she's on screen, she says a couple really interesting things that make her fascinating. One, she says everybody is a pawn in her father's game. But then she says, and yet he thinks that he chose you because it was his idea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I want to know more about this girl because this is fascinating.
Yes, I totally agree. She just commands your attention. And it's not just because of her appearance. There is something in the way she stands. There is something in her facial expressions, the way she holds her body. She's gorgeous, of course, but that isn't what I was focusing on. That wasn't what caught my attention. She just, if she walked into a room, any room, everybody would be turning and looking at her, male and female alike, because she just commands attention. And I figured, when he looks at her after her dad promises her to him, and she just has this tiny little half smile, I thought, oh, no, this was her idea. This was all her idea. Daddy's just a player. She's the game master.
And I love that. I mean, and what it kind of excites me to think is that possibly there is a possibility that she wouldn't end up being a bad person in the end. Mm-hmm. Like that it could be flipped. You could do something really interesting. So, and then you could walk that tightrope almost is like they're doing on Supergirl with Lena, where is she going to be good? Is she going to be bad? Is she going to stay on the straight and narrow, or is she going to, swerve? I feel like Nyssa could be a character that gives us that opportunity to play that for a while before they finally show whatever cards that she's going to play.
Yes.
So I like that because it creates that mystery. But yes, I agree with you. And it really had nothing to do with her looks.
No,
it was just what they gave the character to do that I found her a commanding presence and wanted to know more about her, especially as she, they're walking in the Genesis chamber. She's like, so strange that people used to carry babies in their wombs. Seems so inefficient, and it's like this, she seems kind of like this cold character, but then she has the comment then in the Genesis chamber after they've bonded, and she says, "Ooh, that just really brings out the maternal feelings," or something to that effect. And you get the feeling like she's not super happy necessarily with this cold, sterile life which doesn't leave you any room for true emotion towards anything. When you don't get to choose or have a choice in or feel like you have any say in anything, it's hard to feel like life is really worth caring about.
Yeah, and why should they care? Because everything's planned out for them, and the only moves they get to make, the only alliances they make, the only bondings that they make, it's all about power. That's all it's about. It's all about power. It's about rank. It's about status. Has nothing to do with love, has nothing to do with happiness. None of those things. And to me, when she said the whole carrying the baby in the womb, I thought, well, that's how you develop your bond with your child before it's even born, is you're carrying that kid around inside you for that 10 months, really. It's 10 months, let's be honest. And you make that connection so that, and that's nature. That's nature at work. You make that connection. You've carried this around. Now this thing is out of you and you have to protect and feed it and love it. And you have that bond already. You're like, oh yes, this is of me. I need to raise this, and this is my own. This is me living on, if you want to go that far. But yeah, it's all about nature versus nurture in this world, and there's not really much of either going on. It's just, here's your life.
Well, and this is another thing, just on top of that, I think it's so interesting kind of diving into this because we're talking about Nyssa and the Genesis chamber and everything. There's this lack of nature at all. Mm-hmm. Like everything is this like technological terror.
It's all cold and there's no color. Yeah.
No, there's no feeling to anything in it. It's like all of the joy of life has been sucked out completely because there's no room for failure and there's no room for triumph really. And yeah, it just all of that is kind of wrapped up in everything you see kind of with that interaction between Nyssa and Seg-El, and I think that's great. It really brings home, I think, some of the things that it makes this show interesting here at the very beginning. What did you think? We got Adam Strange, who comes into the show from Detroit, the Detroit Tigers. Sean Sipos, I think is how you would say his name. And I'd say I felt like he was an enjoyable highlight of the episode whenever he was on, because he's just kind of like, hey man, gotta listen to me. Like he's just, I don't know, I liked him. There was something about his portrayal, and I'm really interested to find out more about him because he's not a superhero who gets tons of play all the time. But I'm really interested to see where they go with Adam Strange in this whole thing. And I think the actor brought something that made him worth paying attention to in the show. Yes,
he is another one of those people who has a commanding presence in a very different way from Nyssa. Because the first time you see him on screen, I thought, okay, that guy's from Earth because he is wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap. But it wasn't just the way he was dressed. There was just something about him. And so when he finally makes contact with Seg and starts explaining things, and I just thought, oh, okay, Adam Strange. Now that would make, that can make sense. Is this before he gets shot off to a totally different planet and becomes a superhero there? Probably. So it's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. So they can really do what they want with that. But what I want to know is how he is doing this traveling. Who is helping him do this traveling? Why did they choose him? Is he going to quit smoking? Because that'll kill him really fast.
Yeah.
But
especially if this is before he's gotten his superpowers.
Exactly. Yeah. Because he's well, yeah, if it's before he's gotten his superpowers, he'll probably survive until then. But, he's going to have that rattling cough. Anyway, I enjoyed every moment that he was on screen, and I felt the frustration of him trying to convince Seg that he wasn't just some random weirdo. And I just thought, Seg, look at how he's dressed. Have you ever seen anyone dressed like this on your planet? I mean, I know you're living in the slums, basically, but still, nobody's dressed like this. So, yeah. But it doesn't take Seg very long to realize there is something to it when he hands him the Sunstone, especially. That goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, getting the Sunstone, opening the fortress, figuring out that this is true,
mm-hmm.
and kind of gaining access finally to the systems and everything, and of course the cape and all of that. I think it definitely becomes clear to him that there is something going on. I think that's fascinating. And I think, I like you brought up, who's helping Adam Strange get here? Is this before he gets his, powers, before he's, ended up on this planet called Ron, and all of those things? Is he, being carted around in time by like somebody like Blue Beetle?
I would love that.
Or is he being helped out by a Green Lantern? Or something like. I mean, there's all of these people that you can play with, and I think I'd say I'd say for me when I'm thinking about this show, just in general and moving forward. The thing that is neat about this show is it's not bound by Earth, and therefore we get to explore a lot of parts of the DC universe that have not been touched really anywhere.
Yes.
And there's a lot of things that you can do because there's a lot of characters that aren't Earthbound, say like Green Lanterns or time travelers like Blue Beetle or... I doubt they'll touch any fourth world things here, but, there's just so many opportunities with Brainiac. You've got Thangarians you could maybe touch on, possibly. I mean, it's ridiculous what they could pull from, and I think that's what's kind of exciting here is, to me, I would say kind of in a summation, the show set up really fun mysteries that I want to see them now solve in the show. And that's what you want a show like this to do. And I feel like it really does succeed in that.
I agree. I'm saying that a lot during this episode, but we obviously are much of the same mind on this. I love a good mystery, but I also love a good payoff. Give me that payoff. I want that payoff. And I really feel like we're going to get several moments like that, because they have all of these threads that they're pulling on, and I can't wait to see where they lead. Another thing that I noticed about Adam Strange is that his time in the past, on Krypton seems to be limited. And it seems to be somewhat painful when he is pulled back. So I don't know. I'm really curious about how this is happening and why he only has a finite amount of time and has to keep popping in and out. Just so many questions I'm looking forward to having answered.
If you were to rate the first episode and kind of, I guess, rate the first episode, but then kind of give what you're hopeful for, what do you think?
I was very impressed with this premiere, and I tend to rate things higher than maybe people normally would. So I would say I would give this premiere I would give it 9 sunstones out of 10.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, I really was impressed by everything I saw. I was impressed by the actors. I was impressed by most of the characters. Come on and give Lyta something to do. And I want more. They left me wanting more almost immediately. So they've hooked me. I'm in.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think that for me, this is probably 7.5 to 8 stolen skimmers.
Yeah.
That, you know, I feel like what they've done is that they have really set up great things that I want to, like you said, at this point you need to do a good job of paying off all these mysteries now. And that's the most important thing in a show. And we were talking before we started recording, and it looks like so far, I saw on IMDb, it looks like that there's 10 episodes for the season. At least that's what they have listed at the moment. So if this is that kind of smaller television season, I think they actually have a good opportunity of having created a very nice cohesive 10-arc structure here that could give us that payoff that we're both hoping for. And I am actually, it's a show that now I'm looking forward to see the next episode, to see what happens. Because they did make me want to see more. And it's kind of like Starship Troopers. Would you like to know more? Yes, I would.
That makes my heart sing with joy. Thank you for that reference.
Yeah, so I totally would. So I am excited to see where the show goes, and I hope people will check it out. Again, heck, you can go to iTunes and at least as of this recording, the pilot episode's free, so you can check it out and see what you think. And I hope to be able to come back and talk about the whole season and just see what happens with it and how they play out some of these mysteries and where they end up going, and maybe new questions. That they
Indeed. I'd love to be a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, we might be able to make that happen. I'm not sure.
You think maybe?
I'll have to look at my schedule.
I appreciate you possibly penciling me in. That's very kind.
Yeah. We'll definitely get the pencil out. We'll put a pen in. But I'm so glad it's so great to have gotten a chance to talk about this, because it is something where I wondered what it would be like. And I'm glad that so far it's kind of lived up. And so that's great. And I hope everybody will check it out and let us know what they think over there in the Babel Conference and on Twitter. Thank you so much to Ken Tripp and Davis Grayson. They make this show possible. And they've been doing it for a long time as associate producers here through Patreon. It's pretty cool that they've cared about this show and the network so long to bring us this show and every other show on the network. And so it's a large thing to put together Trek FM. There's so many shows, there's so much happening, and obviously there's really no way that we can do it alone. So we ask you to go to patreon.com/TrekFM, and that is where you can support us every little bit a month, and that makes sure that all the shows that you like keep coming to you each and every week, and they come to you ad-free. So for a little bit a month, you can make that happen. We have some great perks we love to give you at certain contribution levels, but honestly, every little bit helps. So again, it's patreon.com/TrekFM, and you can become part of the team. But Brandi, it is great to have you on here for the first time, and I'm excited to be able to have you back soon. But before that, if anybody wants to talk to you about Krypton or anything else, where can they find you?
Oh, you'll always find me lurking in the Babel Conference. I'm usually in there to like a lot of posts and every once in a while I may even comment when I feel extremely compelled to say something. I usually do the test of, I type it out and then I think, is anyone going to care about this? And I think, if someone I think is going to care about it, then I go ahead and post it. But 90% of the time I end up not saying anything. But you can also find me on Twitter at BrandiWine12. Brandi is spelled with an I, and the 12 is the number 12. I'm also a co-host on Warp 5, which is Trek FM's dedicated enterprise podcast with my pals Brandon Shamatella and Patrick Devlin. Excuse me, Patrick. I'm so sorry. And we have a great time talking about Enterprise, so you can catch me there. Someday when Discovery returns, you'll see me on Live from the Edge again, but I'm not going to bother giving you the details because there aren't any yet. And I also do a podcast with my husband Dave called the Dark Corner Podcast. And we like to take a look at pop culture through a darker lens. And just a fair warning, there is a lot of swearing on that show, and it's mostly from me.
So purely adult.
Purely adult.
Brandi after hours.
Yeah. Brandi in the dark corner.
There you go. Well, you can find me on Twitter, MattRushing02. I'm on Instagram under the same name. Here on the network doing The Orb with Chris Jones, talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I'm over on the Nerd Party Network with my good friend John Mills, talking about Star Wars Aggressive Negotiations. It is a fantastic time, especially if you love Star Wars. You're going to love the show, so check it out. I'm doing Owl Post with Drea Kaufman, talking about Harry Potter, one chapter at a time, which is wonderful, so make sure you check that out. It's a lot of fun. And then last but not least, I am on Cinema Stories with my good friend Courtney, and we talk about film, but through the lens of faith. So you can find all of those shows wherever you get your podcasts, but thank you so much for joining us. And y'all come back here